quarter one is pretty much a wash, aka the first 90 days, you're in a delicate situation when you're in that first 90 days. You're either going to get a quota where you're like, yes, I'm going to crush it, or you're going to get a quota and be like, I have so much work to do and I'm already behind. And that's just medical device sales. Welcome back to First Year in Medical Device Sales. I am your host, Jacob McLaughlin, and tonight we are coming to you with a horrible mustache. But y'all don't care about that. I always like to come in here. You know, sometimes I get some compliments on it, sometimes I don't. But you know what? We keep rocking and rolling. Yeah, my cameraman's letting me know his is way better, which it is. He has a good handlebar mustache, which makes me feel even worse about myself. But here we are, and we are here to help you guys have success in medical device sales. And if you guys watched last week's and the last couple of weeks of our podcast, you'll see that we talked a lot about of what to do at the end of 2024, the end of year planning. And I hope that was helpful. But now I want to talk to you guys about, all right, we're now in 2025. It is in the second or third week of January, and we are now getting to have quotas most likely come up. And so I wanted to just let you guys know how I usually ran in January, if that was going to be my time. Now, again, just so you guys know, I normally was not on a fiscal year. I was off a fiscal year, aka I didn't start on January and end in December, like many of the companies that you guys are a part of. I ran it the exact same way, whether it's January or February or whenever your time is. And so whenever going into the first couple months in quota time of medical device sales, here's the one thing I can tell you. If you guys are in your first year, you will not have your quota normally until like 15 to 30 days before the quarter ends. And that was really hard for me. The first year in there was like, okay, let's get quota because I need to crush it. And then the second month would go by and I'm like, I still don't have quota. I don't know my numbers. So I'm just doing cases and hoping. But then the whole conversation is I don't want to do too many cases because I don't want to see them crushing it. And then they give me a bigger number. And just so you know, every hiring manager and VP I ever talked to in that, they're like, no, we swear that doesn't happen. If I had to guess, it does happen. They're looking at it, but they always say it doesn't happen. But then what would happen is usually we would get it literally within 30 days or even 20 days of the quarter ending. So it would take us 2 to 2.5 months to actually get our quotas rolled out. Then there would usually be a rollout. They talk about it for the whole team. And then they would talk about your specific team. And then you would go meet with your manager. And then they'd be like, oh, here's your numbers. This is where your increase came from. This is how. And then you need to do your planning on how you're going to actually hit it. Right. And so the reason I'm just telling you guys this is usually in the first month or two, I always took this time to get what I needed done. I made sure to set up my territory where it needed to be. So it was running. I was just at that point usually covering cases. I wasn't working on too many deals, at least that were going to close. I'd be working on the pipeline of like what I needed to. So I knew what my number was. So once I got my quota, I could then go right away and be like, okay, over the next 3 months, so I can hit by Q2, this is what I need to start executing on. So that's what I can just tell you guys. Again, that's what a lot of times worked for me because of being able to have a month or two where, you know, these might be the days that you are working only 5, 7, 9 hours instead of your long hours because it allowed for it. Now, again, in January, if you guys are where you're at, you might be booked out because, hey, it's the new year. People are trying to use their insurances, all that stuff. But again, it was always just hit and miss. We had seasons, which the division I was in, like a lot of times December was really heavy in the beginning and then it would go off in the end. And then January started really heavy and then it would like fade off and we'd have a lull around mid-January to February. And then again, but we knew usually we were going to be hitting it pretty hard from that March till May because all the doctors are home, they have school, all this stuff. June and July was always a 50-50 because it's summer and you think people are traveling, but hilarious enough, a lot of times, you know, I would have a week where the most surgeries of my life in that week and then the next week might be absolutely nothing. Right. So it was always hit and miss in the summer. Again, that was just my personal experience. But the reason I'm just sitting here telling you guys is when you're planning for your 2025 year, the biggest thing I can just sit here and tell you is if you don't know your quota and you're in your territory and you're freaking out like I used to, just chill. It's going to come. And what I always had to tell myself is, again, we teach this in our team and we teach this to our people that we work with is in medical device sales and anything you do with success is you have to know when to go really hard and when to rest, right? And there's those times and those seasons in your job, and they can literally be week to week or day to day. There are some times that, like, again, if you don't know your quota, you don't know what your numbers are, you guys don't have a lot of cases going on, like there does nothing to be like, oh my gosh, I got to do this and got to do this, got to do this, because that's a guarantee to come over the next 3 to 6 to 9 months. So instead of like making yourself go crazy when you don't know your numbers, I always took that time a little more off. I would go spend the time that I needed to make sure the territory was in a good position to then take off. Because again, I knew over the next 3 to 6 to 9 months, I would have those weeks and months that it's just absolutely crazy and we have to hustle to make things work. And then once you get your quota, this is my best advice to every single person out there is, many times these companies will break it down for you, which is the nicest thing they can do. But again, what I would do is you need to get your quota. You need to break it down quarterly because you need to know your quarterly quota to see if you're hitting your numbers. But then you also need to break it down monthly. And then once you break it down monthly, break it down weekly, break it down weekly, break it down daily, break it down daily, break it down by how many surgeries you need to do per day to actually hit your quota. And then I would track this. I literally had it on a calendar and I literally would post and being able to show what I was doing. Again, a lot of the great data sets that med device companies show you is that they'll put that in for you and you can see the revenue. But my whole goal would be, there's nothing more motivating than, for example, if you had a day where it was at 0, it's like, well, I need to do 2.5 cases a day. We need to produce. So what am I doing to generate that 2.5 cases today? That was something that would be able to help you throughout your whole career, but also help you in that year. Because again, if you know your numbers, you know everything that you need to, then you know, again, we're consistently doing 1 case every day this week. Well, how am I going to make it so we can get to that 2.5 average that I'm supposed to do? That means I'm going to have some where it's 4. And again, how most of the data works is you usually get like a 2 to 3 day lag. And so you won't really know, or it doesn't show up for a while. That's going to be something that helps you new reps not have as much stress. And then you need to also, as you guys already know, depending on what division you are, you might have different buckets, right? Are you in capital, disposable, right? Like whatever it is. And just breaking down those buckets, because again, those are going to make the percentages of how you get paid. Then you need to plan out, what do you want to make? What is the actual realistic number? And then for me, I would always go, hey, this is the goal. So just so you guys know how I always did it, I would break it down from the quarterly to the monthly to the weekly to the daily to the how many surgeries I had to do, had the average, and then I usually added 2. So for example, if I needed to do 2 surgeries a day, I, in my head, was like, I need to do 4 surgeries a day. And then I would be doing everything that I can, because then that would make sure that I ensure, even if I miss my target that I personally set, that I would hit the company's target. You guys are going to hear this and be like, well, Jacob, that's nothing groundbreaking. You're right. But what I can sit here and tell you, what I've watched a lot of people who are in the industry who barely hit their numbers or over exceed, is what I just told you. Because I've watched people who are like, hey, Jacob, we're doing good. I just need to hit 2 surgeries a day. And they're hitting it. And then they have an awesome month where they hit 2.5, 3, 4, but then they have a lull. And I've literally talked to people who they missed quota by 2 cases. Literally 2 cases was the make or break. But if they would have been hustling in June and got those extra cases, they actually would have exceeded it by 14 cases. And people think that's such a small amount, but it's literally what makes the difference. And so what I can just sit here to tell you, if you're a new rep in 2025 and you're doing your planning for this year, like again, hopefully this can just be helpful of how you break it down. What I would do after I broke it down and everything I knew, I would also project of like, hey, this is what I would look at the data and be like, hey, this is what this did last year and these were the accounts. And then I would just do an audit. Do I still have these accounts? Do I not have these accounts? Do I still have these doctors? Do I not have these doctors? Is there a place where this can improve? AKA, I would find like a surgery center that I was in and I'm like, okay, I've been here and I know that we could actually add this doctor who I've been working on. If I add that doctor, that will give me a lift of this, which will help me hit that. And that was the point for me where, again, when I ran at over 135% with Medtronic, how did that happen? Because of exactly what I'm telling you. I knew exactly what I needed to do. And then I also made the game plan of what accounts I needed to get, what doctors I needed to get at what hospitals or surgery centers. And if I got this and they did this much volume, my lift would be this. And then I just made a very detailed plan of like, hey, what is number 1 goal? What is number 2 goal? Or who's the number 1 doc I need to get? Who's the number 2, number 3? And then when I'm in my current cases and doing account management, now I knew where to go to grow my business, right? What activities am I doing? Am I doing something to meet with their surgery scheduler or their staff? Or am I doing something to find them in the OR? Or am I finding somebody who might know somebody in their office? Like all these different things, because I had the list. And again, you guys want to make a detailed plan on where it goes, because again, your company is going to tell you this is the quota, go hit it. And your manager might meet with you for a week or a month or whatever it is, once a month. And they'll be like, hey, do this, or what's your game plan? Tell me what you're going to do. Oh, that sounds good. Good luck. But it's going to come onto your shoulders. And so what I would just sit here and tell you, if you're like myself, I needed to plan, and I usually would take an afternoon, or I would take a day, again, because it's a lighter time during that period. And I would make sure that I started doing planning once I got my actual quota. And then I would be like, okay, this is the game plan. Quarter one is pretty much a wash, AKA the first 90 days, and then goes. And just so you guys know, you're in a delicate situation when you're in that first 90 days. You're either going to get a quota where you're like, yes, I'm going to crush it, or you're going to get a quota and be like, I have so much work to do and I'm already behind. And that's just medical device sales. And so I'm just going to sit here and tell you is that's why I don't go too crazy, because again, with Medtronic, I had the lowest performing territory. And over those 6 months when I was there, I literally just did everything that I was like, I need to grow this company and do something every single day to grow this territory. And I did that. So then once the new year started and I did exactly what I just told you, then I had it and I was like, okay, you were already on plan to do this, because it was such a low performing territory. I was like, okay, here it is. And I was like, okay, what do I have to do to exceed this throughout the whole year? Right? Because just so you know, if you're all new in med device sales, it's easy to be in the first 3 months, 6 months that somebody's in the top 5 or 10, but it changes daily. And it's really interesting to see who's in the top 10 in the first 3 months and who's in the top 10 at the last quarter, who's in the last 10 days, who's the top 10, right? It comes down to most of the time the reps that have continued to be consistent and they had a detailed plan of how they were to do it. And it wasn't just like, hey, I hope I hit these numbers. So again, you guys, I just want to give you actionable steps. Hopefully some of these tips can help you crush your quota this year in medical device sales. And again, I just want you to know, I want you to win. I want to share my tips with you that I did that helped me have success. And I just want you guys to know, by you winning doesn't make me lose. And it's why I always say this, is because, again, I've been in your guys' shoes. I've been at the organizations where people told me they were going to help me, got ghosted, told me they were going to help me plan, didn't do anything. And you have to realize real fast that you are going to be the reason you're successful, not your manager, not your company, not your organization, not your territory. It's you. And you have to plan for yourself, and you have to plan how you're going to hit quota and how you're going to crush it, because otherwise it's not going to happen. So hopefully this was helpful. Press that like and subscribe button. Share it with somebody if you feel like it was helpful and it can help them. And I just want you all to know to keep getting after it. Go crush quota, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.